India has hit out at China and Pakistan at the United Nations Security Council meeting on terrorism, criticizing both the nations on several counts from double standards to hypocrisy. India's ambassador to the UN, Ruchira Kamboj, at the meeting said that it is most regrettable that genuine and evidence-based listing proposals pertaining to some of the most notorious terrorists in the world are being placed on hold, further asserting on how double standards have affected the credibility of the sanctions regime at an all-time low.
It is most regrettable that genuine and evidence-based listing proposals pertaining to some of the most notorious terrorists in the world are being placed on hold. Double standards and continuing politicization have rendered the credibility of the sanctions regime at an all-time low.
Now, earlier this year, China had put a hold on the UN listing of Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba's second command, Abdul Rahman Makki. In the past too, Beijing had put a hold on listing of Jaish-e-Mohammad's Maulana Masood Azhar, and during that time, it took New Delhi almost a decade to list him as a UN-listed terrorist. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the ambassador pointed to the state hospitality for terrorists. This despite being listed under the UNSC 1267 Sanctions Committee. The UN's 1267 committee lists one of the largest numbers of Pakistanis as international terrorists. These include Masood Azhar, Hafiz Saeed, Zakir Rahman Lakhvi, many of whom are responsible for terror attacks in India, including the 26/11 Mumbai terror attack. During her address, the Indian envoy also outlined the recent attacks on a Gurudwara in Kabul, calling it highly alarming. Kamboj further emphasized on how the links between groups listed by the UNSC as well as terrorist groups operating out of Afghanistan pose a direct threat to the peace and stability of the region. India is currently the chair of the Security Council Counter-Terrorism Committee for the year 2022 and will be hosting a special session of the UN's Counter-Terror Committee in Mumbai and Delhi on the 28th and 29th of October. And for more details, our principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal is joining us live now from New Delhi. Siddhant, thanks for joining us. India has called out Pakistan and China at the United Nations Security Council meet on terrorism on several counts from double standards to hypocrisy. Tell us more.
Well, it was a pretty significant statement made by the Indian envoy to UN, Ruchira Kamboj. It had a message not only for Beijing and for Islamabad, but also for the Taliban regime in Kabul and also the United Nations. Let's talk about the Chinese and the Pakistani factor, which is well known how China, of course, has been shielding when it comes to listing of Pakistan-based terrorists. For example, recently, Makki, who was put for listing by both US and India, but a 6-month hold has been put by the Chinese. Nothing new, deja vu. In the past, Beijing has done the similar kind of holding. Of course, when it comes to Pakistan, without taking names of terrorists and terror organization, she talked about state hospitality. Now, we know that Dawood Ibrahim is believed to be in Pakistan, but Pakistan says that they have no proof about that. So it is well known that in the past, Pakistan has gone to UNSC as well for allowances for UN-listed terror groups and terrorists. But largely, Afghanistan was also mentioned. There are worries over Afghanistan becoming a terror safe haven, and many anti-India groups targeting India can also find space there. So largely, that worry remains something that India has talked about in the past, and the recent killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri is a proof of how Taliban is going against the Doha Pacts that says that Afghanistan will not be used as a safe haven for international terrorists. But a strong message for the UN as well, because the 15th report of the UN Secretary General, which was released, mentioned about various terror organizations. Islamic State, of course, was the key focus area. But there was no mention of Pakistan-based terror organizations like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. And that, of course, irked New Delhi because when these kinds of reports are prepared, all the member countries do give their own assessment. So the Indian assessment was not put in that report. So that is something that was publicly called out by the Indian envoy to the UN.
Right. Siddhant, Ambassador Kamboj further emphasized on how the links between groups listed by the UNSC as well as terror groups specifically operating out of Afghanistan now pose a direct threat to stability in the region. What do you make of this statement?
Basically means, first, of course, the recent attacks on Gurdwara, the Karte Parwan Gurdwara in Kabul, in which Afghan Sikhs and Afghan nationals have been killed. But also there are fears that these terror organizations, especially the Pakistan-based terror organization, can have safe havens. In fact, there was a UN report that talked about LET and JEM having camps in Afghanistan. And ultimately, there is a regrouping happening, which will impact India in near future, perhaps, given the proximity, the geographical proximity India has with Afghanistan. So that worry remains. We know that Taliban leadership has been several times saying that they will not harbor any anti-India terror groups, but nobody believes their word.
Thanks so much for all those updates, and thanks for joining us on WION at this hour. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.